every week when you're doing these projects, but you have to pay your workers. And so we're talking about an access to capital fund where we can help some of these smaller companies so that they can afford to be a part of some of these projects. Also, bonding is a big issue and something I'm just becoming familiar with. I think like for first-time bonders, I understand you have to have like $500,000. Oh, what am I doing something? Okay.
Yeah, okay, I did something. Okay, sorry.
All right, thank you, Alice. You have to have like $500,000 in the bank, and there are a lot of restrictions. And the hardest thing with bonding is the first time you have to get bonded. And so a lot of smaller companies have just, they say that's really maybe their largest obstacle to getting some of these projects. So we're seeing if the city can create a bonding program that would help. Also, we're talking about mentorships because there are a lot of, big construction companies, but they're some of the little guys, maybe they've done, 1 or 2 apartment buildings where you're not ready to develop or, to do your work on convention center. But if you work with a larger company that is, then you start to grow and you learn how to do larger projects. And so we're looking at ways that we can make development more equitable. And so that's a big part of it. I can say about the Brent Spence Bridge, I don't know if anyone is here from A Bridge Too Far. Brian Boland is the leader for that. They have a lot of good ideas about the Brent Spence Bridge project and how it can reconnect the West End. I'll just say real quickly, so my dad, who passed in 2003, but he was a doctor in Cincinnati for 50 something years. And he started on Clark Street in the West End, loved his office, loved his patients. And then the highway came through and he had to move. And that happened. You'll hear people all across the West End talking about, and this was intentional. The government, this was their idea for, I don't know what's called urban renewal, like, put highways through what they consider risky neighborhoods and divide everybody up. And so now the idea is let's reconnect. And so A Bridge Too Far has this idea to acquire some property, which the city has done because they've advocated for that. Do more pedestrian lanes and bike lanes, make it more walkable, livable, connecting the West End. And so that's part of it. The city, and we're getting a briefing on the Brent Spence plans, but my understanding is they didn't take the entire Bridge Too Far plan, but they're taking pieces of it. And so they're going to explain that. So we'll be hearing more about it. And I know a lot of people are emailing me like, ask this, ask that. It's like, okay, we're going to get all these questions asked and answered. But I like the fact that the administration is listening. They're not going, no. They're saying, okay, wait a minute, you guys have some good ideas. Let's see what we can do. And everybody saw President Biden come, and we've got that $1.6 billion coming in. It's $2.77 billion project, and I understand we're 98% there with the funding. So it's really going to happen after 20 years of talking about it. And we're going to have the bridge and a companion bridge. And just to give you some stats about the Brent Spence Bridge, it looks like there are 160,000 cars a day that cross the bridge, which is twice the amount it was built for in 1963. So we obviously have to do something about it. It's kind of a scary bridge. Every time I go across, I'm like, oh. So we don't want that. We need to fix it. We've had so many presidents do photo ops by the bridge. Like, you all need to fix this bridge. And so now at last, we're going to do that. Okay, so that was equitable development. Number 3, pedestrian safety. I want to give a shout out to Councilmember Mark Jeffries because he has taken the lead with this and just doing great work. So we last kind of toward the end of the year, every neighborhood was asked to give our Department of Transportation Engineering the 2 top projects. Like, what 2 things do you want to see happen? And then they prioritized those, and we funded about 75% of them. So there's still more to do, but there are bump outs and street and cushions. Cushions are what you use on main streets because emergency vehicles can't do speed bumps. You can imagine a big fire truck hopping over a speed bump. That wouldn't be pretty. So things like that are, bump outs are happening. the speed, they're not called cameras, but speed signs that, it's a school zone and you're going like 35 miles per hour to show you, oh, you want 35 miles per hour, you need to slow down. So those things are happening. Our police office, our Cincinnati Police Department is working with us to do blitzes. And some neighborhoods were kind of concerned, like we don't want the police stopping everybody. But as they've said, and if anyone has another experience, let me know. But I understand it's going well, that it's totally respectful. Like they stop and say, Mr. Woods, did you realize you're going over the speed limit? This is the speed limit is this. We want you to be aware of that. And, here's your ticket. You still, you still get your speeding ticket. But I think that's helped. And so last year, fatalities for pedestrians were down. We still have some, one is too many, but the numbers are going down. And I think too, just because it's being talked about a lot, that people are really more aware. So I'm getting through it. Am I talking too much, Bill? Okay. All right. I'm just trying to hit the high points. Community engagement. I know Peter Hames is on this call. So Peter Hames, I don't know if Sue Wilkie is on too, but they worked with Kevin Flynn. Now we must be talking 10 years ago. And this, to do this community engagement ordinance. And honestly, and we got it passed in 2021. So it took a long time, like 8 years to bring it through and get it passed. And so I want to thank Peter and Sue because they're still working with us. I know Peter's not happy he thinks we're not going fast enough, and I get that. So the idea is to have a plan for community engagement across all the departments in the city and across all the city commissions. Because people are like, how do you talk to people in City Hall? How do you interact? What do you do? And so that's really important. Another thing that I've noticed, I've only been on council since 2020, but community engagement, I was telling Kevin Flynn this, Peter, has become part of the culture. That people, you hear council people always talking about community engagement. We need community engagement here. We want to put this out. What does the community think? You see, we're doing all kinds of surveys and asking people, what do you think? What do you want? What does the community council say whenever developments come before us? And we ask about MBE, WBEs, what's the inclusion? And what about the community council? Now, it doesn't always go the way that the community council wants. I don't want to say, we always side with the community council, but I'd say a big part of the time we do. And even if we don't, we want to know that they've been heard. And so that's really important. So I think the culture, I can see a change in culture because of the work that Peter and Sue have done. So I'm really grateful for that. You all know the Green Cincinnati Plan from 2018. It's been a big, I'm sure, fun process. It's being updated. For 2023, it's supposed the final one will be in the final version of it will be in the spring. But right now through, let's see, the deadline, I think it's February 7th. People can go online and you can read the current draft and put in comments. So this is another chance for community engagement. So that's really important to see, what the goals are, what the plan is saying, what you'd like to see in it. If there's something in it that you don't think should be in it, give your comments and all that. And you can do that online until February 7th. The last thing I'll mention before we can open up for questions and for discussion and comment is job training for youth. So let me just go back. So I'm chair of the Healthy Neighborhoods Committee, and we meet in different neighborhoods. Sometimes we meet in City Hall, like this week, but in general, we try to go in the neighborhoods in the evening. So we're in, for example, Winton Hills on February 2nd at 5:30, and then we're going to Evanston on February 15th at 5:30 p.m., obviously. But as we had these committee meetings in neighborhoods, and a lot of the talk, it started when people were talking about gun violence and, those kind of like the lack of safety in neighborhoods, and residents were talking about it. They said, we used to, when I was growing up, we had CCY, Citizens Commission on Youth. And it was like a mentoring program where they gave youth jobs and they gave them direction. They helped them in school. And they weren't out here with guns all the time. There's and I think I have his name, right, Pastor Slade from St. Andrew's Episcopal Church. I remember he came to a meeting and he said, a youth with a gun is a youth without hope. And so we started looking at, how do we give our young people hope? Like it's just a whole nother mindset that, the way to go is to, get out here like it's the wild, wild west. When you don't like something or you get mad at somebody, you shoot them. And that's kind of, where it is. And so, so part of it is doing more programming for youth in terms of, careers and job training and getting a lot of our young people to think about a bright future, to have hope for their future. And so we started, our city manager organized Career Pathways Initiative, which includes a lot of things. It funds things like the police cadet program, the fire cadet program, lifeguards. We need more lifeguards. It's another thing, just increase the salary to $16 to $18 an hour. Training's going on now. Throw that plug out there. So when summer comes, all of our 23 pools can be open. And then we're looking at, you all know CPS has an issue with buses and some kids younger, like 7th, 8th graders, not wanting to be on the metro. And so the idea is to train some of the older kids to be ambassadors, also some of the stay-at-home parents to be ambassadors on the metro bus. And so they'll be the leaders. They'll be there, kind of monitoring and making sure, because a bus driver needs to focus on driving. So they'll be there to, to help the younger kids feel comfortable. And that's another job. So there are lots of jobs that we're looking at, as well as some other training that's coming up that we haven't announced yet about, labor jobs like, electricians and plumbers and pipe fitters and all of that. And we're working with the Urban League for that program, but we're not ready to roll that out, but it's coming. So those are things we're looking at. And there's a lot, and I've probably missed something. I wrote down as much as I could think of, but there's more. But so that's my quick summary. I hope it was quick enough. Okay, and so open up for questions and comments, and I'll check online. Okay, no one here has raised their hand yet, so let me look at the chat real fast and see what people are saying. Okay, I think this is from Janet Buning, and it is, okay. And Janet said, this is sounding encouraging. Hyde Park is concerned that we're losing our moderately priced single family housing, which seriously impacts diversity in our community. Currently, there's a developer who wants to tear down a single family home on Observatory and put a 3-condo structure on the lot. They'll sell for more than $1 million. The house has been termed a contributing structure, and we hope that offers some protection. Okay, yeah. So and we're trying to discourage that kind of thing, when people want to tear down and put up something, yeah. Okay, so then Beth Solabarger, our former Women's City Club president, said, are there forms of public support for workforce housing as well as affordable housing? So Beth, workforce housing would be that higher AMI, right? So like, 60%, 70, 80, 100, 120. And so some of the funds will go to that as well. Let me just say this. So we had an argument, which I actually lost, but that's okay. In City Council, we had $5 million from the carryover, and I wanted it. And Victoria Parks and Scotty Johnson, we were all just the three of us that wanted it to go to the lower 60% or lower, which is what the Fund 439 says. But the argument is that, of course, it's more expensive to build lower income housing because you're not getting that revenue back. And so the argument is that if we restrict that money, so what they're saying is like maybe a developer might say, we're going to build 80%, something at the 80% level, but we're going to include 30% with it because now we can afford to. We're getting more rent up here, but now we can include lower rent. And so that was the argument for not putting that restriction on. So, but anyway, that's just to say that there is money, the affordable housing includes those higher levels as well. And I see Elizabeth going now. So Elizabeth Brown, she's the former executive director of Housing Opportunities Made Equal and a member of this church as well, a friend of mine. So, and she's the expert. So, and now go ahead, and then I'll try to say back to the people on Zoom what you're saying.
Well, I can understand why the developers and even the financiers want it to go up to 120, but the need is government is supporting median income and not supporting the lower levels, we're not, we're not putting our public dollars where the need is. It's a lot easier to develop moderate housing than it is to develop the lower end. You're right, it's going to cost more.
Yeah.
But if that's where people are losing their housing, that's where you have these prices, then that's where the public dollars ought to go. Yeah, I was very disappointed that, yeah, you're putting a lot of money into financing, people who are at the middle income in the city. And,
Yeah.
And letting the folks who are at the lower end worry about whether they're going to get evicted tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hope they couldn't hear. Okay.
Just make it sure.
Okay. So what Elizabeth Brown was saying was that at the lower end of the spectrum, yes, it's harder, true, more expensive building those homes, but that's where the greatest need is, right? And so, so what are people going to do? And it's true that every day somebody calls to say, they have to move either because they have a vacate order, because the landlord hasn't kept up the property, maybe they're being evicted. There's some reason they have to move and they don't have anywhere to go. So we really are struggling in the city with lower levels. So we kind of lost that fight, but the fight, it's not over. I mean, the city is really, I'm encouraged that, the city's committed to affordable housing, including at the lower levels. So the almost 500 units that were built were 60% or lower. And there've been some that are, I should mention there's Slater House that's coming up, but that's really the first project that's being funded by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. It's going to be in the West End. There's 62 units, and I think they're all 30% AMI. So that's a good thing. And I think that's the first project funded by the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, the fund of funds. So that's a plus. That's encouraging. But 62, and we need 25,000. We know. I mean, we can't just throw our hands up and not do anything, but we know like this isn't the total answer, but it's, I think we're moving it in the right direction, but I get it. Yeah. Anybody? Oh, okay. Let me go on. Okay. And then Peter Hames, hi, Peter, says, how do I get a copy of the 10-year income projection for the Affordable Housing Fund? Okay. Well, just call me. We'll ask for that. Somebody must have it. It would be helpful if the community councils had at least a month, since they all meet monthly, to review and comment upon the 3-tier tax abatement proposal. Over the Rhine Community Council will not be able to discuss. Oh, okay. So it sounds like what Peter is saying is that our timeline is too fast, because we said it's coming up for a vote February 15th. So yeah, I can certainly ask about that. I'll certainly ask about that. And then Jan Seymour is saying, I'm confused. How much is in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? It's confusing because there's no one fund. So like the Fund 439 has restrictions, like it has to be spent on 60% or lower AMI. And I think 50% of it has to be 30% or lower. And then there are other funds that say you could spend on, 80%, 100, 120%. So there are different pots of money. And all together, including the private investment. And I asked this question right before I left City Hall. I said, how much do we have all together? And they said it's about 100 million. So, but they're in different pots, but all managed for us by the Cincinnati Development Fund. And actually, Dr. Dudas, who's our finance director, gave me a 22-page report or 22-page PowerPoint that I could actually send to you that explains a lot of it and kind of shows where things go. I didn't get just like a one-pager saying we've got like, $1 million here and it's from here and it can be spent on that. And I, if I had more time, I would, distill that down because I wanted to see just the one pager, but I didn't get a chance to do it. But I'll show you the information and then we can distill it down. You won't be confused when you see it. Yeah, and I know you're saying there's only one trust fund. There's only one 439, fund, right? And that's why that's Jan Seymour. And so that's why, it's a misnomer to say Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We're saying in the fund, they're funds for affordable housing. It's not all the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, right?
On a different topic, and if you covered it and I missed it, I'm sorry. Is there any movement on the Metropolitan Sewer District? Arrangements, layout?
Yeah, I don't have an update on the MSD. I know that's been an ongoing issue. I'll get an update for you. I should have known somebody was going to ask about that. So
It's kind of a regular question.
it is like, what is happening with that? So I'll get an update and I'll send you guys an update and I'll make a note of that. So in case anybody didn't hear, Ed Burdell was asking about an update on the whole thing with the Metropolitan Sewer District. So we'll get information. It's kind of, it was a little
better not to talk about it and just let it get along, but eventually it's going to catch up.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Okay. So I'm going to put here affordable housing funds, not trust fund, affordable housing funds. That's one thing I owe you all. And then 2 is MSD update. Okay. Okay. Let's see, are there more? All right, so Peter's saying, Peter Hames is saying, will the city take the lead on defining what the affordable housing is and how it relates to AMIs? My opinion is that 80% of AMI is market rate. Yeah, so we, it's all considered affordable. I guess depends on, who you are, but I can say we do know that the greatest need is 30. And then also that 60, we need to look at 60% or lower as our greatest need. We know that's the greatest need. So, not trying to hide it, not trying to say, 80%, we're doing all this affordable housing. So the numbers that I was giving you about the units, that was for 60% or lower. But and that's where the need is. I know that Josh Spring from the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition gave us some numbers. And I should have brought his because he was showing how like above, I think like 80% to 120%, there was some need, but it was really, really small. And he had numbers for that. And then, he had by AMI what the numbers were. But I think everybody's on the same page. We know it's really lower income. And that's who's calling us, people who, are really struggling financially and cannot find an affordable place to live. So that's, we're all on the same page with that. And then Janet Buning is saying, can you explain anything about the contributing structures designation, how that may or may not affect housing development? I wish I brought that with me because, we had that discussion in council last year. And there's some rules about contributing structures, like it has to do with what can be torn down and then what can't. Whether they're contributing to the character of the neighborhood. And there are strict guidelines for that, which I'll send out to you all. I don't remember a lot about it, except there was a list and we were talking about it because it had to do with some structures that some folks wanted to be torn down. And the issue was, were they contributing structures or not? Okay, let me see if I can turn this around so they can see. Speak up so they can hear you. Okay. And can you tell if you're on camera?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So you talked at the beginning about the tax abatements, and I was wondering if you all have thought or there's any plan to align that with some of the 2030 or the Green Cincinnati goals, as far as you talked about visibility and accessibility, as far as electrifying homes, upgrading circuit breakers, solar, closing off the envelope with insulation and those types of things to make things more efficient. And you talk about how those can support each other.
Yes. Okay. So, and I'm sorry, tell me your name.
Kyle Beck.
So Kyle Beck?
Beck.
Okay. So Kyle was asking about whether, and they do whether the 3-tier tax abatement is, kind of in sync with the Green Cincinnati Plan goals. One thing, let me just say as an overall general comment, which I didn't mention when we were talking about trying to save existing structures versus tearing down and starting over. Apparently that's better for the environment, fewer emissions when you keep that structure versus building something new. And then we have the LEED certified, and certified environmental programs. So those get, I'm just looking at the list here, the incentive, the additional amount to increase the assessed market improvement value is 200,000 for those. For LEED Gold or Platinum, it's 300,000. They have the LBC qualified net zero full or pedal, must include energy pedal. And I can't explain all that to you right now, but Kyle probably could. Okay, but we'll figure that out. But that's an extra additional 300,000. So the answer is yes, it's in here. So that's a plus. Yeah.
Michelle, you talked about the tax.
Oh, wait, let me turn around so people can see. Okay.
Tax abatement for the residents. And I'm glad that they're doing something about it, although it sounds awfully complicated. I'm still not sure why you're still giving a tax abatement to folks that are building $1 million condos. I mean, I just don't understand why the city does that, but it's glad to hear they're improving. But the commercial tax abatement side of it, where it seems like the city gives every developer who comes down the pipe a tax abatement, said, well, you don't have to pay taxes. I mean, I read this week in the Business Courier that Cincinnati is deemed a hot residential market. I mean, a national study said we are a hot residential real estate market.
Right, that's why these investors are coming in. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if we're a hot market, why is the city bribing developers, you know, giving them money to develop when they're making a profit off of it? It doesn't make sense. And it's also an issue of tax fairness. I mean, every time someone is told you don't have to pay taxes and the rest of us do, I mean, there's a real issue with the fairness of the tax system.
Right. So let me just say two things about that. We are looking at our commercial tax abatement policy as well. What rolled out today was the residential idea. So let me just say this quickly about the commercial one. We do want to encourage development everywhere. You know, we want to, brings jobs, and, neighborhoods want it, community councils want it. They're asking for it. And so we look at, there's certain criteria, and one of them is kind of a but for, and so our Department of Community Economic Development, you'll notice whenever they bring projects to us, one of the things is, could they do it without this abatement? And so, that's kind of subjective. I know the numbers.
The developer's not going to tell you that.
Yeah, the number. Well, they
make big bucks off of it. So why wouldn't they tell you? It's like the beggar on the street giving you the story. He's giving you a story.
Elizabeth Brown is saying, of course, they're going to say they need it. They don't always, but this is our administration who has looked at the numbers, and they're the ones determining, is this a but for, not the developer, though. I know it's still it's still subjective. So I'm not saying it's a foolproof plan, but we do ask, but for the abatement, could they still do the project? And so sometimes we've said no, but let me just say this, there's more coming on that. So the administration, so we don't have that information yet, but they are looking at our commercial tax abatement policy, just like they did residential. But can I tell you this about the because this just rolled out this morning, it's new, so I'm probably not explaining it well. It's not complicated. They've really made it. The administration has really simplified it. They said when HRNA, the consultant first came to us, their policy was a little too complicated. So they're looking at the criteria, and I was criteria has to do with like poverty level. I was trying to find, there's 6 criteria, and that's how they group the neighborhoods. So given those 6 criteria, which I'm not finding quickly enough to tell you here, but the neighborhoods, so I'll send this so you all can see this too. But so for the lift neighborhoods, and that's a lot of neighborhoods, it's like, Camp Washington, Sedamsville, Riverside, Avondale, Hartwell, Lower Price Hill, those are the lift neighborhoods, because they had 0 to 2 of the criteria. Criteria might be like a certain income level, something like that, of the 6 criteria. And I wish I could think of the 5 others, but anyway. And so they only had 0 to 2 of those criteria. So they're in the lift area, which means they get the higher abatement. They get, we need to incentivize people to develop in those neighborhoods. And then the second, and I want to say something too, like what happens to prevent gentrification. So remind me to mention that. The next area is the expand criteria. So these neighborhoods have 3 to 4 of the criteria. And so there are places like Clifton, like Northside, Pleasant Ridge, East Walnut Hills. They're kind of that middle tier. And then you have the higher tier, sustain, where they meet 5 to 6 criteria, might not need an abatement, or if they need an abatement, a smaller abatement, right? And so that's obviously like Hyde Park, Linwood, Mount Adams, Mount Lookout, those neighborhoods. So it's not really that complicated. And the other point of that is every 3 years, there has to be another look to see if this is working. Like, does this work? Is this doing what we're saying it should do? So it's not just like, this is it forever, but, for the next 3 years, we're going to try the lift, expand, sustain model and see if, if the criteria work, if the groupings work. And so we're going to take a look at that. I was going to say too, someone asked this morning at the press conference, what about when taxes go up? Because of course, neighborhoods want development. And then next thing you know, like the property taxes have gone up. So, what the mayor said is, we're meeting with the auditor to see how we can, work with the state and really the federal government too on some of these on some of these taxes, property taxes, and how we can work that out so that people, you're living in the neighborhood, development happens, and then your taxes go up. So now you can't afford to live there. We had people, we've had a lot of people complain about that. And some, like someone called me and they said, my home, I have an $800,000 home, but I'm calling you because I can't afford the property taxes that are going up because somebody next door to me tore down a structure. They've built like a $2 million home there, but they're not paying much because, it's abated. And this was maybe 2 years ago before we put some more caps on the tax abatement. And so they're barely paying any taxes, but our taxes have gone up. And even though you're thinking, oh, you've got this $800,000 home, you must be doing okay. We're not. And so people all across the city were complaining. And so that's a part of it too. Like, what do we do? Not just for the higher end homes, but for everybody when development happens in your neighborhood, which you love to see, but then suddenly you can't afford to stay. And so how do we keep you there? And so that's a work in progress too. Okay, wait, some more questions have come in. Let's see, did I skip someone? Okay, I think I did.
Stacy, did you get Stacy's?
Okay, Stacy Purcell, okay. Does the city have plans to use some of the money from the property tax rollback to support low-income homeowners struggling with rising property taxes? So someone did ask about, what about, do you guys know about the rollback? Usually we try to keep the property taxes lower so that we get, I think it's like 29, so I don't even want to throw out the number, whatever the number is. We said this year we're not going to roll it back just because we actually need the money. And so what the mayor did is say, this is what we can use that additional money for. Some of it was like home repairs for low income folks, eviction support, a fund, because the federal money is going to run out. I hear it's running out. Legal support. He's got a program that he's working with legal aid so that, folks can get attorneys when, they can't afford it to help legal aid with that. And there was some infrastructure in there too. So I'm not sure about rising property taxes yet, but Stacy, that's a good suggestion. That would be a good fund as well. So, yeah. So that wasn't in there, but with things like home repairs and costs like that. So we can talk about that. I love that idea. Then Janet is saying, this is so weird sitting here looking at the computer. How's everybody doing? Are you guys okay? It's like, I feel like it's a computer show. Okay. Does the new 3-tier tax abatement plan offer any relief to senior citizens who are not at a poverty level, but living on a fixed income and finding themselves unable due to rising property tax rates to remain in their homes? Well, this is what I was saying about working with the state and federal government, because this homestead exemption used to be higher and a lot more aggressive. There's still a homestead exemption, but I think they lowered it, and so I'm not sure what happened with that, but they're saying that is like one answer to help our seniors. And so,
The homesteading exemption.
and wait, let me show you Ed Burdell, who has more information on that. Okay.
My understanding is the homestead exemption used to be an automatic thing that a couple could apply for, a family owner and homeowner could apply for when they reached 65. And then sometime in the last 5 to 8 years, it was changed so it has an income element to it. So that the complaint that we're hearing is from people who don't quite make the income cutoff, and the difference is substantial. I mean, it's significant for those who have a homestead exemption.
Okay. Well, that's great. Did everybody hear that? So what Ed was saying, which was touched on this morning at the press conference, is that the homestead exemption used to be if you're 65 or older, you would automatically get it. And now there are income limits. And so it's cut a lot of people out of it. So the idea, that's what the mayor was talking about, is to get that expansion back so that it's across the board. So that would definitely obviously help seniors.
I do think that's county based. I mean, I don't know if the city can do it themselves.
Right. So yeah, the city cannot. It's county based. And then he mentioned that we have to go to the state and federal government as well. So yeah. Okay. All right. Then Jordan Kotler is saying, does the city have a position on requiring that commercial developers receiving a tax abatement make a commitment? Okay. Oh, I love this question. To provide a percentage of affordable units similar to the federal LIHTC program, low income housing tax credit program. All right. So when I first got on council, I thought we should make it mandatory that if you're getting a city benefit, you have to include affordable housing. But I was told we'll end up in court. It's never going to happen. However, the mayor of Dayton just made this requirement. You know, they have a 3-tiered program too. And I think with the upper tier, I'm going to go look at that more closely. And he made that requirement. And I thought, maybe it's not as far fetched as I guess we all thought it was. And so, no, we don't have that requirement, but that's something we need to look at.
Yeah, Vice Chair, thanks for.
Oh, okay. Let me turn. Okay. Hold on. There you go.
Thanks for providing us more for us. Often we're have our nose to the grindstone and don't get to hear some of these larger, more global issues. My question is that the American Rescue Plan has allowed a lot of funding for citywide initiatives over the last couple of years, and quite frankly, made the last couple of budget seasons easier on me. Kind of what is the plan now that these funds are going to start drying up for funding all these worthy kinds of initiatives?
Right. So that is, so not only is ARPA money going to dry up, but you all know that with more, thanks to COVID, people realized they could work from home, so they could, live outside of the city and still do their job. And so, of course, we have to refund. I think that there's a 3-year look back that we have to refund taxes, and that's a big part of our budget. So we are looking at the mayor has appointed the Mueller Commission with, Mueller from P&G being the chair of that, to look at, should we increase the rate now from 1.8% to, how we had it reduced by 0.3% because of the whole issue 7 levy and all that for SORTA. Or, what are some ideas about how to get that revenue back? And so they're looking at that. They really have just started. So we don't have an answer yet to that, but we're looking at it for sure. And let me say, a lot of the ARPA money we've saved because we don't know how much we're going to have to pay back. And also we've saved a lot for infrastructure needs. I can tell you, I did a tour of firehouses, for example, and like there's one firehouse where they had to put like boards up under the floor, some reinforcement in order to hold the fire trucks. And it's just, I was like, what? Like, this is crazy, you know? So we have an older city and a lot of needs. And then, vehicles, one thing, we talked about the green plan is we're trying to do more electric vehicles. And so that's kind of a push too. So we have a lot of capital needs as well. And so we've kind of held on to some of the ARPA money. The year before, when we first got it, the first tranche of that money, we spent a lot, which I thought was great, on community programming, which I don't think the city has really done before. So these were, as opposed to, the larger organizations, some of the smaller organizations came through and, like someone's church might say, I've got this youth program or like this anti-violence program, and we tried to fund some of the smaller ones. So that I thought that was good too. And then we have funds like, Keep Cincinnati Beautiful does the Safe and Clean Fund, which is great. So people can apply. It's not just for blight, it's for like anti-violence, things that are, community based. We have the Boots on the Ground Fund that the Greater Cincinnati Foundation is actually building for us. And so the first round ended October 31st, and they're going to make their recommendations soon. And then there'll be more because there's more money there. And that's for community-based organizations. So we're trying to hold on to what we did with some of the ARPA money when we first got it, which was to kind of spread it around so that, because we said, wow, if we're going to save all this money for infrastructure, what are we got to do when people come and say, I've got a summer camp that needs money, or we need to do this youth program, or, we've got this job program or a soup kitchen, or, whatever. So that's why we have those funds to make sure that we have money for the, community driven projects, because there are a lot of folks just out in the community that are doing really good work. And so we have to support them. I think I answered. So I had Jordan. Oh.
I have questions from your comments from you all.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize it was so late. Gosh, I'm sorry. Okay.
A few times you either directly said or sort of alluded to trying to get things done that would align with the values, I think, of a church like ours or maybe other faith-based organizations in the community, and either failing or having a really difficult time. When your goals align with the values of faith communities like ours, how can we be more helpful to you?
Well, let me just say, so one thing that's happening Saturday, so back on October 22nd, Christchurch Cathedral had the anti-gun violence summit here. And so they brought in someone from the mayor's office in New York, Erica Ford, as a keynote speaker. And so she's invited a delegation to come to New York, and we're actually going on Saturday. So from the 14th to the 18th to see what they're doing that's working. And so so it's, I love that. So they're like community members. It's not just people from the church, but the church is helping to fund that trip. Except for me, because I'm not allowed to be, you're not allowed to pay for me, unfortunately. I have to pay for myself, but that's a whole nother issue. But anyway, the other folks are being funded. There are people from East Westwood who are coming, people like Mitch Morris from Cincinnati Works, who does a lot of work in the community. Bishop Ennis Tate is helping to organize it. Of course, Dean Owen is going, and, lots of other folks are going to go visit New York and to see, and we just had a Zoom call with them about the different programs that they have and how they're decreasing gun violence. And we're just going to see, are there some things that we haven't thought of here that they're doing that's working that we can bring back here? So, working with faith-based organizations is part of what we do. Actually, just, the city, we're here, everybody is a partner, right? So it's not just like us and then you guys, it's like we all have to work together, right? So it's really important that we, communicate. That's why these forums are so important. So we get feedback. And the experts like, Elizabeth talking about housing and, and you're talking about the environmental and the homestead pro. I mean, those, we all have to work in partnership together. So it's super important, but thank you. Thanks for asking that question.
Well, we would like to thank our Vice Mayor.
This passed so fast. Oh, my goodness.
And,
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
ways as we make the transition from Zoom forums throughout COVID back to both in-person and Zoom. Got to have the microphones today that seem to work because you did such an able job.
Well, we just flip the computer around so everybody on Zoom can see who's talking.